the life stage of spiritual fatherhood. If you were to make a chart that would show the amount of little children, young men, and fathers within the body of Christ, you would see it taper like a pyramid for a variety of reasons. Simply put, there will always be more little children because until Jesus comes back, there will be people being saved that need to be grown and matured and discipled. And there will be people that don't want to grow between little child and young man or woman of God. And additionally, the transition that occurs between young men and fathers is very difficult. In fact, it is impossible to see for some. Some will never get through that transition point for a variety of reasons. For some, it takes a long time to get there. That is, if you were to be saved in your 60s or 70s, you might be very fortunate to get from little child to young man or woman before your physical death. Second, it involves giving something up. You see, just as earthly youth and vitality and being in your prime has a limitation on it, the energy which is used to grow and accomplish things and get through stages of life, it is not unlimited. Now, our society is making a mistake when it creates situations where those who should be young men and young women are placed into competition with those who should be spiritual fathers and mothers. It is a mistake because it means we do not value the wisdom of older people. It means that we'd like to pass them through the same meat grinder that they had to go through other ages and stages of life. It is a way to profoundly disrespect the wisdom and maturity of age. So it's a societal mistake. The church has the opportunity to be better. Because of that lack of respect, we fear transitioning from young man or woman to spiritual father or mother. All of the visible authority generally is placed in what you would call young men or young women of the faith, people that are leading youth groups and worship bands and Bible studies. For the most part, that energy that wants to get things done and wants you to put your name on something is energy of spiritual youth. There is supposed to be a natural transition where that person becomes less visible and wants something higher. Now, I want to do my best to leave that something higher to be delineated in the next video, which is the spiritual life stage of being a spiritual father or spiritual mother. It is not age. It is not age that does it. It is spiritual maturity and life stages. So while I am to respect someone who's older than me because they're older than me, that's truthful. They're not necessarily my spiritual father or mother if their maturity is equal or less than mine, but that's a different subject. So why do some not make this transition? Because of fear of loss of power. And it's created by our society's sin against old people, our society's lack of respect for maturity and wisdom and respecting the strongest, respecting the loudest, respecting the most dominant person, and kind of seeing that older person is fading. I remember in the church I grew up in, for a variety of reasons, it was rootless and needed the spiritual oversight of other churches. And there was a man, a great theologian and man of God, in my opinion, who was sent up, I think, almost every weekend to equip and lay a foundation with the older generation of my church, which corresponds roughly to the generation of my parents. And he's a generation older. He's passed and is with the Lord now. But he was faithful. He would travel. It's a 300-mile plane trip. Give up weekends and just huge amounts of his life to come and be a spiritual father to these people. But as he grew older, people that grew into the space of young men and leaders in the church I grew up in would say he has less to offer us now than we have to offer him. And it struck me as odd then, it strikes me as crazy now, because that's the attitude we display toward those that have passed out of prime and youth into wisdom and maturity. Well, they have less to offer. There's a profanity wanting to rise up in my lips, and I'm suppressing it. I'm showing self-control. I'm mastering my tongue. But I'm going to say baloney. If they had wisdom from God when they were 50, they've got it when they're 70. I'm going to resist the urge to go off on a tangent and show anger about this subject. But here's where I want to land in this subject, is that if you've got the same group of leaders in that young man, dominant, prime of life, position of leadership for decades with virtually no change in the leadership of a church or a ministry, and there's nobody willing to move on to a position of maturity and age, and not being obviously in control and be the person that helps and equips those younger people, there is a group of people that are old that should be fathers that are holding on to the position of youth and strength and preventing a natural life process from occurring within the church. There is a greater potential to be achieved than just your own ministry. Your own ministry is good and is right and is God-given. But the transition from young men spiritually, young men and women, to spiritual fathers and mothers is one where you trade the good for the great. You trade the good for the better. You trade, I'm trying to do what God put me here to do, for I'm trying to make sure, God, that you're able to do what God put you here to do, which I realize now I've given you some of what the ministry of fathers is. If I have blessed, encouraged you, given you any bit of spiritual insight and nugget of equipping, please like and subscribe. Thank you.